Good morning. I'm Cindy Hackett. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of the Tahoma UU congregation. We work for you. As we begin our gathering, I want to respectfully acknowledge that I speak to you today from occupied Puyallup ancestral land. I pay respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to their descendants who still live and work and play here today, and all Indigenous people. We welcome you so much, all who are joining us with a longing for community, the hope for peace, and who are seeking justice. We are a diverse congregation in many ways, which encourages each one who comes through our doors to find their own truth and belief. We invite all to join us in a search for meaning and community, even this virtual community, guided by reason, respect for each other, and by love. The wonderful thing about this virtual platform, as Bob mentioned, and as we just are kind of amazed by every week, is that we have an opportunity to welcome guests from outside our traditional geographic area. In past Sundays, we've had visitors from across the country, and as Bob mentioned, even from across the ocean. A very special welcome to our new friends and our returning friends from near and far. I'd like to invite you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Links to the video version of this service will be posted there this week, as well as on our website. You can find all of our program announcements this week in our e-news and listed on our church calendar. And the really cool thing about the church calendar is that anything that you find there that you might like to participate in has a link to the Zoom link. So it makes it super easy to find your way from the calendar. But here are some of the highlights for the week. Following worship service this morning, Nancy Slocum, our hardworking Director of Religious Exploration, will host Kids Chapel at 11:30 a.m. Nancy will also host a parent drop-in on Zoom on Tuesday at 7 p.m. And I know that we're a little Zoom exhausted, many of us, but it is a way to find that precious bit of community that keeps you going. Looking ahead, we'll be having a congregational meeting on Sunday, February 21st, to consider the safe parking program. And prior to that congregational meeting, the Ad Hoc Committee on Building and Ground Security will host a discussion about safe parking and how our community might choose to become involved and why they might choose to become involved on Sunday, February 7th at noon. More information on the program is available in the e-news and in blog posts on our website. Next Sunday, we're delighted to welcome Matt Aspin to our pulpit via Zoom. Many in our congregation will remember that Matt did his ministerial internship with us 3 years ago. We hope you'll join us for worship with Matt and his message, Space to Dream. Joe Rettenmaier joins us today with his message, An Inauguration of Imagination. Joe has been working with us this month as Sabbatical Minister as Reverend Linda Hart takes a much-deserved break to refresh and renew during a 1-month sabbatical. Joe is a minister in the Unitarian Universalist Association, and this Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., the last Tuesday in January, Joe will be hosting tea time on Zoom, so you can be in conversation with him and learn a little bit more. Then Reverend Linda will return to hosting tea times in February. This Friday at 8 p.m., Joe will also host Dream Vespers. Joe has introduced this to us, and I've enjoyed it when I have attended. Links for all our programs, again, can be found in the weekly e-news or via the events on the church calendar. We really want to thank you for your ongoing financial support to our congregation that makes all of this possible. These programs, our staff who create and facilitate the programs, and the connections that we make through our congregation. Without you, we would have nothing. So thank you very much for that. Your energy, your time, your commitment, and your financial support. So now, take a deep breath and let us gather in worship.
Thank you, Cindy. Friends, our opening words today come from the Buddha. The thought manifests as the word manifests as the deed develops into habit, and habit hardens into character. So watch the thought and its ways with care, and let it spring from love, born out of concern for all beings. So friends, as we move into our chalice lighting, we are going to light a special candle today. A special candle in memoriam of continued outbreaks of violence in our region, from Portland to Tacoma to Seattle and beyond. May peace begin to make its way home. And as it does, we also light this candle with hope in the light of a new inauguration.
We now come to the section of our service where we light our normal chalice, starting the service, which Nancy's lighting, and you can find the words in the chat. We light this chalice in deep respect for the mystery and the holiness of life, in honor and gratitude for those who have gone before, with love and compassion for those who dwell among us, and with hope and faith for the generations to come.
My name's Nancy Slocum, and I am the Director of Religious Exploration for Children and Youth here at Tahoma Unitarian Universalist Congregation. And this is our time for all ages, the time when we invite kids up typically to the front of the sanctuary to hear a lesson or a story. So get close, listen in. We're so happy to have any kids and youth here with us, and all of you adults as well. Wow, what a week this has been. It's been a big week in our country. Did y'all watch the big event last Wednesday? As you probably know, every 4 years we have the opportunity to vote for who our president is going to be. Back in early November, as you recall, we had an election and we chose our new president, Joe Biden. But he didn't become president on election day. There's some time between the election and when the president gets sworn in, gives time for transition from one president to another. And being sworn in, it involves the new president and the new vice president reciting their oath of office. Those are the words that the incoming president and vice president say, promising to do the job to the best of their ability, and that they will uphold our Constitution, the law of the land. So last Wednesday was the day when Joe Biden was sworn in and became president of the United States. And Kamala Harris was sworn in as vice president of the United States, and it was a very exciting day for many of us. Kamala Harris becoming vice president was especially significant because it's the first time we've ever had a woman as vice president. She's also the first Black person to be vice president, and the first person of South Asian descent to be vice president. It was a historic moment. You know, as I watched her be sworn in, I thought about how when I was a little girl, if someone had said to me, Nancy, what do you want to be when you grow up? If I had said, I want to be president of the United States or vice president of the United States, people would have laughed at me. They would have said, oh, isn't she so cute? She thinks she can grow up to be president. We know that women can't be president. Because back when I was a girl, and I know you all think that was a long time ago, but it really wasn't all that long ago, that people thought that men could only be president and white men could only be president. People thought that women weren't smart enough or emotionally strong enough to take on the job of president. And we know that isn't true. There have been many women in other countries who have served as leaders of their countries and they've done just fine. But for me, it felt like a really big deal watching Kamala Harris be sworn in as vice president on Wednesday. So Wednesday was the inauguration, and an inauguration it means to introduce something new. Sometimes we talk about inaugurating new rules or inaugurating a new way of doing things, or we inaugurate our president and our vice president into a new term. And we hold our inauguration. It's a big deal and a big celebration. It's a big show. This year's inauguration, it had Lady Gaga singing the national anthem. Jennifer Lopez sang, "This land is your land." Former presidents attended. It was a big event with a lot of important people there. There were festivities into the evening with famous performers singing, ending with Katy Perry singing her song Firework to one of the biggest fireworks displays I have ever seen. It's quite awesome. I've gone back and watched it on YouTube. It's just amazing. It was a big to-do. But the person at the inauguration who impressed me most was a young woman named Amanda Gorman. And I know she's impressed other people in our congregation this morning because I was asked to light a candle for her. She's only 22 years old. She's young, and she's a poet. She was asked to write and recite a poem for the inauguration. She was our National Youth Poet Laureate. The Poet Laureate is an honor that's given to someone that says they're very accomplished as a poet and that they're highly respected for their work. And the United States has a Poet Laureate, but they also have a Youth Poet Laureate, a young poet that gets this honor. And she was the very first person who was recognized as our country's Youth Poet Laureate. And when she read her poem at the inauguration, I was just stunned. The words that she wrote spoke to all of us, and her delivery was just exquisite. And as I said, I don't think I'm the only one who was impressed by her. Since the inauguration, she has been interviewed probably over 100 times by newspapers and radio programs and television programs. And listening to her interviews, I have learned that she started writing poetry when she was in elementary school. She was drawn to writing because she loved words. She loved words, but she also had a speech impediment that made it difficult for her to pronounce certain words or certain letters in certain words. So she took to writing them down and writing them into poems. With her speech impediment, for instance, she couldn't pronounce the letter R clearly. So even saying her last name, Gorman, was hard for her. And as she got older, she wanted to be able to read her poetry out loud. So she worked really hard and she practiced and she practiced. And she worked to make sure that her tongue and her mouth were in the right formation in order to say the letters and say the words correctly. She would sing the song, if you know this song, Aaron Burr, Sir, from the music Hamilton. Lots of R's in that one, Aaron Burr, Sir. It wasn't until only a couple of years ago that she could pronounce the letter R. She worked really hard to overcome that hurdle because she wanted to get her poetry out into the world. But she's also, in addition to being a poet, she's a social activist. She works to work against racism, to work against discrimination. And when she was only 16, she started a group called One Pen, One Page. It's a writing and leadership program for youth. She is sharing her gift of writing with the world. What an amazing accomplishment for someone so young. We've talked about it here, how that's one thing we all have. We have our voice. In her poem, Talking That Gets Us There, she says, so it's up to all of us to say enough is enough and to speak out with all our hearts. In one interview, I heard Amanda Gorman in this week. She said her mother would always tell her, everybody has their own gift. It's important for people to find their own gift and then share that with the world. So what is your gift? Perhaps you are a poet like Amanda Gorman, or you write stories, or perhaps you create art. Maybe you love science and math and will someday work to end climate change or cure some disease. Whatever your passion is, whatever your gift is, share it with the world, and together our gifts will make the world a better place for everyone. I love you all. I miss you all. And so I send you out with these words. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life, we hold you in our love as we go.
Nancy, thank you so much. Words. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. That vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous mid-sized congregations, and many, many small congregations. No matter the size, every congregation depends on each of its members, each one of you, each one of us. By your commitment of time, energy, and resources helps make that grand vision real. Individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists, building a new world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. On the screen, you can see how you can support this sacred space that is here for you. Please take a moment now and utilize these methods to give your support to your church. We now dedicate our offerings that were given today, and for some of us are given every month. You can join me that are in the words. We dedicate ourselves and our offerings to the work of this congregation, weaving a tapestry of love we call community, both within and beyond these walls.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Nancy. Our reading today is from Howard Thurman, professor at Howard University. He was minister at large of Boston University. This comes from the book Addicted to Hurry. Keep alive in me the forward look, the high hope, the onward surge. Let me not be frozen, either by the past or the present. Grant me, O patient Father, thy sense of the future, without which all life would sicken and die. Ah, such a week. And such a meaningful service so far. So friends, are we ready to imagine again? After years and years of suffering a nightmare, are we ready to dream again? And the dream, we the people want more democracy, not less. We the people want more faith, not less. More trust in the systems that are designed to serve the individual while maintaining healthy order for the whole. The attempted coup by our former president and the successful transition of power to our new president highlights just how precious democracy is. And I believe how democracy is a practice, a centuries-long practice. And that practice is inherently rooted in human faith. Fortunately, in our United States of America, we still have the right to criticize democracy's shortcomings or its susceptibility to exploitation of power or its exploitation of representation. So far in our human world, many souls still practice their faith that democracy is the healthiest form of governance. But wait, what makes our devotion to democracy's principles and processes inspiring from a faith perspective is how many people recognize it is very far from its potential, yet we still imagine how much better it can become. How we, the people, can continually improve our practices of democracy to suit the needs of all the communities interdependently depending upon it. Why is that? Is it because democracy is the best instrument we've devised thus far to implement the greater good all humans strive to imagine? Is it because our imaginings of that greater good for all souls compels us to hold our leaders accountable to our basic human need to have a voice, to have influence over the circumstances of our lives within our communities? Friends, our United States of America has just inaugurated the most diverse federal government in our nation's history. Think about that. The three co-equal branches of our nation's government have never had this level of racial, cultural, gender, orientation, economic background, diversity, and more. It is so important, friends, that we recognize the wonder of this today. It is spiritually critical that we embrace this, because the survival of our souls, our beliefs, our faith depend on recognizing this moment. Let us give thanks, friends, for these recent fruits of America's labors that have delivered us from evil. Let us care for our concern by practicing gratitude for all the freedoms we do enjoy. Regardless of the marginalizations we experience, let us feel grateful that we have the freedom to speak more freely about the freedoms we still yearn for. Imagine if the coup had succeeded. Imagine how we'd now be looking back on our previous criticisms under what would have then become an autocracy. Imagine how we might be preaching to one another today if that had been the case. Perhaps we'd be chatting things like, "We never knew how good we had it. Oh my gosh, I never believed this could happen." If tyranny and white supremacy had succeeded in overturning our free and fair democratic election, imagine how regretful we would be. Gratefully, thankfully, faithfully, we can worry about that a bit less right now Because in this never-ending practice of faith that we call democracy, we the people successfully voted out tyranny and voted in unprecedented diversity in our nation's leadership. The majority of we the people successfully moved a step forward. Once again, we successfully advanced democratic practices where people have agency and their voices are heard. And right now, as a result, we are inaugurating bold, imaginative minds into the democratic process in order for participation and open access to remain. We can continue to imagine and practice and dream and practice participatory democracy at the local and community level. Local democracy leadership enables communities to develop their own solutions to the challenges they face. I feel that blessing this week, friends. I feel it. So, friends, the truth is, we as a nation will always need, we will always seek greater faith in what President Biden calls, quote, our determined democracy. Yes, we will always need more practice of this practice, so our leaders are more equitably elected by this land's true populations. And yes, we will always need to practice holding our leaders accountable to the systemic safeguards protecting all people against the abuse of power and its instruments. And yes, we must continue developing our democratic systems to integrate input from those of us who are most marginalized by current societal norms. We have so much to be grateful for, friends. So much to be grateful for. If we don't welcome and practice that gratitude in this inspiring moment of inauguration, I fear our spirits and souls will wear out and perish. I fear if you don't allow yourself to experience joy, your ability to keep moving forward with the work and the practice of democracy will grind to a halt. And tyranny will continue its attempts to take you over. Imagine how this week's blessed inauguration of brilliant, diverse leaders will sustain your faith in your practice of democracy. How will you practice your precious freedom to practice democracy at the local level this week? And at the same time, how will you practice your principled UU faith to influence solutions in this moment on a global scale? Because friends, gratefully and thankfully, the technological state of communications we now enjoy allows each of us to play a role in developing local solutions and global solutions. Our interdependent web of human livelihood continues expanding. We continue imagining how it can free all souls from injustices. Because yes, we have now inaugurated federal political leaders who know what it means to be marginalized in America. And their toil and trouble will count for little if our livelihoods and economies remain under the control of super rich elites. The inequity gap in economic decision-making will continue to call our elected leaders to act in political decision-making. How do you imagine our post-COVID economy? As a transit operator for King County Metro, I find myself imagining, and perhaps you have too this past year, how do we wish to prioritize our society's essential services and organized labor protections for all souls? Now that we have had success voting in national leadership that is determined to end this mismanaged pandemic, how do you imagine all souls participating in the management of our services? Or participating in management of our natural resources that feed us, that provide our energy, so all souls enjoy healthier livelihoods? And how, in the name of the God of your understanding, will you choose to turn your imagination into action, to actively support the imaginative generations rising up today? Young leaders like Amanda Gorman, who are imaginatively mobilizing all souls to stand up to autocratic power elites. Their Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and Time's Up movements have mobilized all generations of us to build better institutions at all levels, to make elections more free and fair with more proportional voting systems, so we build greater participation. It was greater participation in democratic process that succeeded in this beginning of turning our nation away from the evils of fascism this winter. In fact, it's been the greatest participation in elections in our history as a democracy. Thanks most greatly to the mobilization and organization and leadership of Black Americans and people of color. We are so grateful. We are so imaginative. We are so humbled by our principled faith that all souls will know liberty and justice, hope and love. We honor every person's right to reach beyond those who agree with them. We honor every person's right to reach beyond those who agree with them and initiate conversations with those who disagree. Let us continue to reach people we don't usually reach, friends. Let us create safe spiritual space here in this practice of love, hope, and democracy as a religious community where polarization is addressed, where reconciliation between opposing ideas transforms the greater good. As Howard Thurman prayed, keep alive in me the forward look, the high hope, the onward surge. Let me not be frozen either by the past or the present. Grant me, O patient Father, and I add, God of my understanding, thy sense of the future without which all life would sicken and die. With hope, love, and liberty for all. Amen. So friends, will you join me in a pause for a moment and a deep breath? Let us reflect on what has been most meaningful during our worship today and set a personal intention for the week to come. May it be so. Our closing words, friends, come from Amanda Gorman. And the final words of The Hill We Climb. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation and every corner called our country. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. A new dawn looms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it.
And now, as our service comes to a close, Nancy Slocum will extinguish the flame of our chalice. The words for that extinguishment are in the chat. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And we will now have our closing song, if you will, from Asher, and the words will be on the chat.
I receive, to you I give, together we share, and with this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and with this we live.